Welcome everyone to our July Lunch and Learn. You've got me today, Kate Lamont, Director at Thrive Aged Care and Occupational Therapist. And today's session is entitled Beyond Resisting Care, How We Can Reduce Distress During Personal Care. So I'm excited to present on this topic for you all. As you know, at Thrive, it's myself and Kathy Kirby as directors. And if you haven't come to one of our lunch and learns before, just a little bit about us at Thrive. We support organisations and teams that work with older people across the care continuum. And we do that in a range of ways, helping teams with service support, helping teams with education training and mentoring. And again, if you're jumping on for the first time, please make sure you've got yourself on mute. It's just me today presenting, letting people in, putting people on mute. So it's going to be a tricky session for me behind the scenes. So if you can pop yourself on mute, it makes it a lot easier for me. Thank you so much. Well, let's get started. Firstly, I want you to picture this. You are a client in your service, wherever you're working currently. And in your service, a carer, someone that you can't recall seeing before, has asked you if you would like to have a shower. What is your answer going to be? Go and jump in the chat and let me know what your answer is going to be. Someone that you can't recall seeing before, who is your carer for the day, has asked you if you would like to have a shower. What is your answer going to be? No, no. Who are you? Where's Sue? I love these answers. Absolutely. We don't have any yeses or maybes or okay. No, we're hearing no. Who are you? Where's Sue? And now let's think about a person living with dementia. Why do we think a person living with dementia might be resistive about having a shower? And is it a normal response? Go ahead and pop some comments in the chat for me again. No idea of context. That's right. Where's Sue? Who are you? Get away from me. Yep. Any more comments in the chat? Because they're cold. That's it. The environment, sensory overload. Oh, I love your thinking. It's a normal response. They might not recognise the staff member or the need to have a shower. And why aren't you taking your clothes off? You're making me do it. Oh, I love the answers you're giving. You're in the right place. It's not an abnormal response, is it? No. Resisting being undressed by someone that you don't know is not abnormal. Wanting to do things at your own pace or on your own terms is not abnormal. And being angry if you've told someone that you don't want to do something, or you've, told someone this is how I want to do something, and they're trying to correct you or distract you or redirect you or lie to you, that's not abnormal. So why do we think, or why do we label it as resistance from someone living with dementia? Absolutely. And I love the comments that you're putting in the chat. Please feel free to keep popping them in the chat. So today we're going to think a lot about why people resist personal care, primarily having a shower. And we're going to provide some different approaches or different strategies to think about how you can support someone living with dementia in that task. What I do want you to remember is for people living with dementia, their primitive brain, which controls the flight or fight or hide or seek or freeze response, is on high alert, continuously on high alert, okay, because they want to be safe. And showering can make you feel unsafe or put stress on the brain. You're vulnerable, you might be uncomfortable or cold or in pain. You might be with a strange person or in a strange or unfamiliar environment. You might think you don't need a shower. Yeah. You might have that normal reaction to someone trying to touch you when you're naked. Yeah. Or you might get frustrated that you can no longer do things that you want to do, or you need help, or someone's telling you how to do something that you think you should know how to do. All this puts pressure and stress on the brain and can trigger those 5 F's that keep us safe. Before we kick off, personal care, showering is one of those tasks that we walk a really fine line in. And the fine line is in between seeking permission, providing care that might verge on the side of abuse, and also verging on the side of neglect. Okay, because if someone refuses a shower and we don't provide assistance and we document that refusal, and we do that day after day after day, when there might be clinical or hygiene needs that we need to meet, potentially we might be verging on the side of neglect. Conversely, if that person resists a shower and we bring in additional carers, they have an increase, they become more agitated, potentially medication like psychotropics are used to address those behaviours that they're displaying, potentially we're verging on that side of abuse. So when we're helping people with personal care, we're always wanting to work in that space of doing it with permission, with someone involved in the task and permitting us to do so. If I can just ask for everyone to make sure they're on mute again, that would be great. It's just me running this webinar, so I'm going to need your help just to make sure that you keep yourself on mute. Thank you for that. If you can do that, that would be great. So today we're going to talk about how we can really work in that space, that permission space. So I want you to think about what contributes to someone living with dementia having showering success, and pop your comments in the chat. What elements contribute for someone living with dementia to having success with personal care, primarily in the shower? Awesome. I can see some comments coming through. Building trust, having a warm environment, having a comfortable temperature, patience, comfort. Wonderful. So you're thinking about some things that we can do as the person helping, knowing someone's preferences, for instance. You're also thinking about some things that we can do in the environment. But it sounds like we've got to focus on making that person feel safe, comfortable, and setting them up for success. Wonderful. So I want to share with you a model that OTs use, and we use it when we're working with people in lots of different ways. And we're going to start to think about how we can use this model and apply it when we're helping someone with personal care. It's called the PO model: person, environment, and occupation. And when we think about occupation, I just want you to think about the activity that you're helping someone in. So in this instance, it will be having that shower, but you can apply this model for lots of different activities. Okay. So the first thing we want to talk about is the person. Okay. When we think about the person, we think about that person in front of us. Who are they? What abilities do they have? What health conditions do they have that impact on their abilities? What's their cognition like? What's their preference? Do they like to have a bath? Do they like to have a shower? Do they like to have a wash? Yeah, habits and routines. Fantastic, Leo. What's their strengths? What's their life history? Yeah, do we know a bit about them? Have they been someone who's never showered? Maybe someone who's grown up in the war and, showers once a week and has a wash every other day. What about their culture? How does that impact them? And what's important to them with their values and goals? So when we think about the person, we have to think about all these kind of factors, okay? So I want you to think now, I've seen some comments in the chat, what person factors could trigger resistance for a person living with dementia? And like Leo, you've kicked it off. It could be that I don't have a shower. That's not part of my habit or routine. Yeah. What other person factors could trigger that resistance for someone living with dementia? Pop your ideas in the chat. Culture, absolutely. Miscommunication, yeah. You're not communicating to me in a way that I can understand. Maybe there's a language barrier. Maybe it's got to do with cognition. Wonderful, Kathy. Past trauma. Yeah, maybe we don't know of that trauma. Time preference. I like to shower at night before I go to bed. You're asking me to do it in the morning. Yeah. Poor awareness of deficits. That's self-awareness. Yeah. Wonderful orientation to time and place. Pain, fantastic. Embarrassment. These are all the things that you're listing are all related to the person. They can be a lot that we really need to think about. Okay. One thing for someone living with dementia that we need to think about is that there is change going on in that brain. Yeah. And we can't see it. It's not like a physical disability. It's that cognitive disability that we can't see, but we're going to see it impact and function. And here is an image of a brain who was that was affected by Alzheimer's for 10 years. Okay, and you can see the whole brain has structural change, let alone the chemical change that's also going on there. So when you're working with someone living with dementia, you're going to see changes to that executive thinking, that decision making, that impulse control, that self-awareness, the ability to sequence a task. Yep. You're going to see changes in the hippocampus to memory, wayfinding, time awareness. You're going to see changes in the temporal lobe, which is understanding what you're telling me, being able to find words and produce speech. You're going to see changes to the occipital lobe, which is going to impact on my field of vision. And you're going to also see motor and sensation changes. Yeah. And these are all things that we need to think about when we're working with someone living with dementia as well. The next thing I want you to think about is the environment. So we've had a bit of a think about the person, what things linked to the person could make them resist showering. When we think about the environment, we need to think about the physical environment where we're doing that activity. And we are part of the physical environment, would you believe? Yeah. So the social environment, the people in the environment are part of that environment. So, how might the environment impact on someone having a positive experience in the shower? Yeah, I love it. Okay, we've got fear of falling. Products don't smell the same. Yep, they don't feel safe. If something doesn't feel the same, I might be reluctant to use it. Might think you're trying to poison me or put something on my skin that I don't want to put on my skin. Um, if it's not a normal environment, I'm used to having a bath and there's only a shower. Yeah, the environment's cold. Yeah, my skin's more sensitive. Maybe I'm more sensitive to temperature, to touch. Yeah, new equipment, that equipment doesn't look right. Yeah, yeah. Um, Harsh water on your face, unfamiliar carer, absolutely. Yes, we are in the environment. Good pickup. Yeah, new people, not familiar. That person's trying to rush me. Yeah, they're doing stuff to me that I can do for myself. Yeah, not used to accents. Absolutely. Yeah, all these things are part of the environment and that we're in the environment too. So great thinking with that there. Doing to me, not with me. Absolutely. And that is the goal of what we're trying to do. We're trying to work in that space, which is permission. Yep. And permission is something that we need to assess all the time. Yeah. Permission is not something when you work with someone living with dementia that you can necessarily grab verbally. It's something that we need to assess all the time to make sure we have permission throughout the task. And the way to do that is include the person in the task. Do with, not for. Fantastic. Slip fear. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. I'm just going to I think we've got it. Everyone's in. Beautiful. So we've talked a little bit about those environmental factors that could trigger resistance. You guys had a really good list there. And one thing I want to point out, I've got some photos here of this bathroom, is contrast as well. Contrast is something that can impact. If I can't see the toilet because it's against a white wall and a white toilet seat and a white floor, that's going to impact my ability to be able to participate in the task. So here is just a good picture of a nicer and more functional environment that I found compared to this one here. So when we think about the environment, there's a few factors to think about. Temperature was one that you guys picked up on, temperature of the water, temperature of the room. Noise is a big one for people living with dementia. If the environment is too noisy, and especially in bathrooms, we have a lot of hard surfaces where noise reverb bounces off hard surfaces, so the acoustics can be quite challenging. Lack of contrast, if I can't see what I'm meant to do and where I've meant to be, maybe it will increase my fear of falling, and maybe I might not be able to participate to the best of my ability. The layout of the bathroom, being able to find my way around the space, being able to know where the products are that I need to use, being able to see the taps, etc., to be able to initiate or sequence task. Equipment, privacy and mood is a big one. And carer approach. And carer approach is probably one of the main trigger for change behaviours that we see for people living with dementia. Us, the people who are trying to provide care and support, our approach really does matter. So we really need to remember that when we're working with people living with dementia, especially in personal tasks like providing hygiene, care or support, or assisting with showering. The last thing I want you to see, to think about in this PEO model is the activity, or as OTs call it, the occupation. So the activity that we're trying to help someone with might be having a shower. Yeah. I want you to think about how many steps are actually involved in having a shower, because we tend to think it's something pretty easy that we've probably done thousands and thousands and thousands of times in our life. It's a routine activity, isn't it? So supporting that person living with dementia, and we want to support them in the shower, quite often we're probably assuming that it's just an easy everyday activity. But have a think about how many steps are actually involved in the shower. And I want you to think from the very start, which is recognizing the need that you need a shower, and all the planning and preparation that goes into that, having a shower, starting the task, moving through the task, and knowing when you're finished, when you need to stop the shower. Pop in the comments how many steps you think are actually involved in that whole process for me. How many steps do you think are involved in having a shower? Anyone keen to take a guess? Great. You could break it down to 50 or 60. Absolutely, Bart and Leo, you've had the similar guess, 50 or 60. Multiple at least 20, heaps. Step it out, and there are countless. Absolutely. I would encourage you to go when you're having your shower tomorrow. Have a think about it. Have a think about actually how many steps there are. And I'd probably agree with Leo and Bart. There is probably up to that many. For the sake of this presentation, we're going to say there's at least 20 to 25 if you stepped it out very simply, okay? Not in great detail. Now, those steps actually require skill, okay? The sort of skills that they require are thinking skills like planning, sequencing, knowing what comes next, initiating, which is starting something, yeah. Then your motor skills, your fine motor skills, and your gross motor skills, yeah. And we know for people living with dementia, fine motor skills are impacted first before more gross motor skills. Also, skills around sensory processing, like knowing about the temperature of the water, maintaining your balance, maintaining your awareness of where you are in space, being able to touch and how much pressure you might need to put on certain objects, like when you grab that shampoo to squeeze it, or when you're rubbing soap onto your body. And also motivation and insight. So there's lots of skills that we need to have for that very, very simple task of having a shower. But what do we know happens to those skills for someone living with dementia? Go back and have a think about that image that I showed you of that brain of a person living with Alzheimer's for 10 years. There's change across the whole brain. Yeah. Breakdown of executive function, which is responsible for your planning, your sequencing, your initiation, yeah, your problem solving, your decision making. Yeah. Changes to sensory skills that we've already talked about, changes to sensory processing, changes to motor skills, changes to motivation, self-awareness, and insight. So that shows that that simple task of having a shower is impacted. And we're really only focusing on it from the point in this presentation from someone living with dementia. We know that the people that we support have quite often multiple complex comorbidities that will affect their function in different ways. So really important to think about that we're not necessarily asking them to participate in a simple task. So what can we do in regards to the activity? Yeah. How does the activity actually impact someone's success? Well, the activity might be too hard, or we might make it too easy. Yeah, making it too easy is not a good thing either, because you might make that person frustrated that they're not doing as much as they can for themselves. That person has to be motivated or engaged to actually complete it. Yeah, so that's something that we need to work on. What is their motivation? We have our agenda and our motivation supporting them potentially with that shower. It's that job that we need to do. But what's their motivation to get them engaged to participate in it? Maybe it's something they've never completed before. Maybe we are asking them to have a shower when they're someone who has always had a bit of a wash. Yeah. So we're asking them to do a new something new, or the environment is a different environment that they're not used to doing that task in. Breaking down the activity into steps so that someone can do one thing at a time can help the person in the activity, and making sure that we help the person to start the task or to move through the task is really important. So how we help them is really important. And that's by our verbal cues, what we say. Yeah. Hey, Kate, turn on the tap. It's by our visual cues, showing people, pointing to the tap, or Kate, wash your shoulder. And it could even be touch cues. So a touch cue might be getting someone started with a task. So together, you're helping them. And once they've started, they might be able to take over. So you can see there that we really grade our approach. We assume that someone can do something first, starting with the verbal. And then if that's not enough, we grade up, adding in visual and potentially adding in some touch. And that way, we're working with the person in that space of having permission and collaboration, working with them on the task. Yeah, it's really important that we go slow. We give people time to respond. We know that it can take up to 3 to 5 seconds for someone with dementia to be able to process the information coming in. So giving them the time to respond is really important. It's also really important to give the person control and always ask before you assist. Yeah, not just jumping in and doing too, but making sure you're seeking permission if you're going to physically assist that person as well. Okay. Now, the goal is not showering. And that's interesting because that's the example that we've spoken about today. But really, the goal is really to support someone to attend to their hygiene needs in a way that maintains their control and dignity, lets them participate to the best of their ability, because we want to maintain function. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. Yeah. And sets them up for success and makes it a positive activity, because we don't want that to be a negative experience that they're going to decline tomorrow or the day after or the day after. So, we need to, that's our goal. It's not having the shower. We might not get to having a shower. We might maintain that hygiene in a different way that meets these goals, maintaining dignity, control, allowing the person to participate to the best of their ability and making it a positive experience. So a quick little case study about Bill, and this is a case study that is a residential aged care case study. It is based on a true client, but it can be applied also to people you're working with in their own home. Bill was new to a residential aged care service, and the staff were having challenges getting Bill into the shower. At first, he was hesitant to go near the space at all. And Jenny, she was the staff member, she managed to get him into the bathroom, but that was it. He became agitated and aggressive when he was in the bathroom, and he began hitting out at the staff member, Jenny. So she immediately called for assistance. And on that particular day, Bill didn't have a shower. Yeah. So didn't push further, which was probably a good thing. But Bill needed to have a shower because of his continence. Okay. So the next day, Jenny again was caring for Bill and she asked him if he wanted to have a shower and he said no. So based on what Jenny remembered from the day before, he didn't have a shower. 2 days later, he still hadn't had a shower, but he needed one because of his incontinence and dirty clothes. So Jenny asked another staff member, Angela, to come in and help her for safety reasons. And Angela went to assist and noticed a few things that made her pause before proceeding any further, which was great. Angela noticed that Bill wasn't wearing his glasses, okay, and the room wasn't set up and ready for the shower. No clothes were out, no clothes were ready. They only had one towel. Um, she also noticed that the shower was very dim and dark, and the bathroom was really small. So when her and Jenny were both in there, they had to stand on either side of Bill, and they were likely out of his line of sight. And 3 people in the bathroom likely felt very intimidating for Bill. Bill was really slight build and he wore a lot of layers of clothes and he was a person who felt the cold. She also noticed that Jenny spoke really fast to Bill and moved very quickly. And because of this, it seemed like she was rushing Bill. So when we stop here, you can see that Angela has noticed some things related to the person, the environment, the activity, things that we could probably adjust and fix. Yeah, and things maybe that we're not meaning to happen. It's just the way it is. But knowing about them more, we can change our approach. So what happened next? They arranged for maintenance to come in and change the light bulb in the bathroom and to also remove any unnecessary clutter to give a little bit more space in there. They made sure that they had towels ready for Bill, that the shower was turned on so that the chair and the room was as warm as possible. Bill liked the Bombers, so they played the Essendon theme song and he sang along. And they put in some visual cues to help Bill undress and shower and do as much as he could for himself. Yeah. The second staff member stayed in the bedroom, so she wasn't in the bathroom, but she was close by, so she wasn't crowding over Bill. And he participated more in the shower, although Jenny could see that he didn't want to sit for long, so she didn't push it. He was able to wash his own private area with verbal prompting before the shower ended. So they achieved the goal, which was attending to that hygiene related to continence care. And it was a much more experience for everyone. It wasn't a long shower, but they got what they needed to get done. Yep. And I can see some great comments going in the chat as well. So make sure you have a look at that, some other great strategies. So I think just it's 1 o'clock, and I know we go to 1. So the goal is not the shower. Yeah, the goal is creating a safe space where people feel comfortable, in control, where we can make sure people use their skills and strength and we make it a positive experience. And that saying, do with me, not for me, is so important when we're working with and supporting people living with dementia, especially in very personal, intimate tasks like personal care. Okay. So a few take-home messages and then we'll stop the recording so that you can ask some questions. But there are reasons why people living with dementia resist personal care, and we know they're not abnormal responses. You and I would probably respond in the same way. The triggers for resistance can be related to the person themselves, the environment which we are part of, or what we're asking them to do. And there's not one approach that's going to work for everyone. Each person living with dementia is different. So the support that we provide and how we do it has to be a bit different. The goal is maximizing skills and independence and creating that positive experience. The goal is not having a shower. We need to be flexible in our approach to help work with the person to achieve that goal. If you liked this little taster, we do have a longer course available on our online platform, Open Learning. It's self-directed. It goes, I think it's about 90 minutes of education, and it's for clinicians and carers who are working in health or community or aged care, supporting people living with dementia in personal hygiene tasks. So you can check that out. As always, we will ask you for some feedback after this session in an email, and you'll get sent a copy of the recording as well. So look out for that in your emails, and feel free to share the recording. It will be on YouTube and you can share it with your colleagues. But I'm going to stop the recording now, and if you would like to ask any questions, you can. Thanks for jumping on for us.